Oh, my name isn't Fallon Gus. Whoops a daisy. Oh, when am I changing my name? What's happening? Edit name. There you go. Tish, Echo. Of course it's Echo because I'm here, right? How's everybody going? I'm good. How's the one person on the stream going? That's what I'd like to know. We are here to have a look at. So there's a YouTuber. Oh my God, I just blanked on her name. She's a lawyer. It starts with L too. Leisure. God damn it, why can't I remember her name? She's brilliant. Leisure Miller. Okay. So she calls Jack Smith Daddy Jack Smith. I don't know if I get the daddy vibes from Jack Smith. I have a lot of respect for him because of what he's doing with this lawsuit, with this legal case. Oh, would you call it a lawsuit? I don't know. Anyway, Jack Smith is special counsel for the insurrection case against Donald Trump. So I'm going to guess that this stream, they'll question the monetization because it's a dicey subject. And yeah, my allegiance is I hate Trump. That's my bias. He's a liar and a failure and a loser and a fool, and he's dumb as a box of hair, and he's heartless. I think yesterday or the day before, a Vietnam vet gave him his Purple Heart. It's so sad to see somebody so indoctrinated into a cult that they see this pathetic man as any sort of hero worthy of that, especially when he got a doctor's note to sit out Vietnam. So, yeah, I thought that was really gross. I wouldn't have accepted it. But you see, in the footage of it, you can see that Trump has no idea about the emotion that he is supposed to feel recognizing the sacrifice that this Vietnam vet has of giving him the Purple Heart. He has no idea. When he was on the Dr. Phil interview, Dr. Phil asked him a question about what did he do after the assassination attempt, and like, did you get in contact with your people? Like, what did you say? What was the family saying? He didn't talk about emotions at all. Like, he didn't say, oh, like, had a very emotional discussion with Melania and blah 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 blah. Like, it was very strange. He doesn't understand emotion. Yeah. All right. So I've done a little bit of pre-reading, not a lot, because the evidence. So the document that was released by Judge Tanya Chutkin, that's hard to say. This is to ascertain whether Trump was acting in his official capacity as the president, or he was acting as a candidate. All right. And that's what this whole series of evidence is, so that he is able to be appropriately prosecuted for the insurrection and for, spurring it on. Within it, there might be, it's interesting. We'll talk about, like, his indifference to Mike Pence's safety. I wonder if that's a different case. But anyway, so Jack Smith had to get special permission to give this much evidence. But after the Supreme Court's ruling that a president is immune from prosecution for any decisions that were in an official capacity as the president, that's why he's doing it. It meant that, from what I've heard, and that this is just from left-leaning places, like the Majority Report, where else? Majority Report, some with maybe Secular Talk, not TYT really, because Anna Kassarian, the Young Turks, she's come out as unaligned, and she was pivoting right anyway. And why not? Why wouldn't you pivot right? That's where the money is, you know? And I was sort of like looking at, no, I was listening to who was talking about it? Oh God. Maybe it was Pod Save America or the Vanguard, or maybe like Secular Talk, and they were saying there are not many women in left-wing politics. So I don't mind having my voice there. It is what I believe, and a lot of people think that that Kamala Harris is left-wing. She's not. She's centrist right. Like, she's absolutely not a left-wing. So she's not a Marxist. She's not a communist. She is a centrist, leaning right. So yeah. So this is my political art. Yay! Now, at the moment, I'm also working on an art project. It's called Flood the Post, and you make postcards to send, and they're all about like getting the message out on one day in the post, and it's for Palestine. So here's some of my designs. Today marks a year. Free Gaza. Today marks a year of where the unrest started and a genocide began. So we've got Stop Killing Children, and most of these are going to go to Anthony Albanese, our Prime Minister, who is Sanction Israel. Another Stop Arming Israel, and I spelt Israel wrong the first time I was doing it. How many have to die before you care? That one's a bit plain. I might jazz it up. Stop using my tax dollars to commit genocide. Ceasefire now. Free Palestine. I've got a few. I just did like 4 of those ones. Free Palestine with some rainbow on it. Stop the genocide. And then that's the same design there. Free Palestine, Free Palestine. And then my note says stuff like, stop supporting a genocide. There is still time to be on the right side of history. When you lose the next election, this will be the reason. Penny Wong is our Minister of Foreign Affairs. This one says, blood on your hands. You are complicit. And there's another one for Anthony Albanese. You have doomed us with Dutton. What an embarrassment to be worse than Dutton, and because of that, you are handing him victory. He isn't supporting genocide. You are. You deserve to lose. No. Stop the support. They are killing children. Stop collective punishment. And there's another one of Penny. Which one was the other one of Penny? because I thought Penny Wong was going to be our gal. Like, she was going to go all the way, you know? I thought she was going to be. She's queer. She's queer. She's Asian. She's a woman. Yeah. No, that's not it either. That's too Albanese. Okay. Sorry. Talk amongst yourself. Oh, here we go. Uh, Penny Wong, you could have made history as our first elected female PM. We did have a female PM, but she wasn't elected. It was like a party coup. And upon reflection, I should have been happy about that because Julia Gillard, amazing woman. You could have made history as our first elected female PM, but your support for the genocide is your legacy now. I'm ashamed I thought so much of you. So there you go. So I've got some more I'm working on, but I can't post. You're supposed to post them today. I can't do it because it's the King's birthday. Happy birthday, King. Dickhead. I can swear now. Yeah, I didn't realize. So I actually sent an email into work because I'm part-time now, and I thought this was my part-time day. So I was like, I'm not coming in tomorrow, and it's like, and no one's coming in tomorrow because it's the fucking King's birthday. It's the first time we've called it that. It's weird because we've had Queen's birthday my entire life. All right, so we're gonna have a look at this. No, that's not what I like. Mm-hmm. And is that big enough? Can I zoom in? I will. Maybe if I go to a screen. No, that's not what I want. Oh, um, oh yeah, that's a bit better. You can sort of see Minnie back there. I think I might have to use my iPad to actually look at it. Okay, so there's a lot of redacted stuff in here, and I haven't highlighted all of it because it's 165 pages. Bro, no. And the defendant is Trump. Then we have co-conspirators. Oh, maybe if I get a list of who's who, that might be easier. So there's a couple of co-conspirators. They are CC1, and then there are P1, I think, people, and they're the like witnesses, and Mike Pence is, I think he's listed. Now, in the Jack Smith. Mm-hmm. Because I think Roger Stone's in there, and so is Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon, who's currently in prison. What is he listed as? I don't think is he a co-conspirator? It doesn't say what the code is. Okay, Rudy Giuliani. I think he's Donald's lawyer when they refer to that. John Eastman is what was his? He was helping with the plan to submit a second set of electors from contested states. I think he is a co-conspirator. Kenneth Cheesebro. I'm a real political coverer. He's an attorney. Doesn't say which ones they are, like the codes, you know. Doug Ducey was the Arizona governor, but I think he actually stood up to him at some point in time. I don't know. Chris Carr, who is the Georgia Attorney General, because Georgia's the state that he said fined 10,000 more votes or something. Mike Roman, Eric Hirschman. I've got to tell you, it is very nice to see these white people just, you know, with all the mug shots. Sidney Powell was an attorney. Boris Epstein, Republican strategist, lawyer, and top Trump advisor. Now, don't get me wrong, he did sort of like bunker down with this circle. So yeah, it did get interesting. Like because apparently they can even tell because of how chronically online he is, they can tell what he was doing, what he was watching on the TV while he was tweeting, so it's like evidence all over the place, you know? All right. So the government's motion for immunity determination. So this is to decide whether he will have immunity. Now, if he does in fact win the presidency, this will go away. He will make this go away. So people are saying this is the October surprise. I would agree with that from their point of view. And then I think the Republicans' October surprise is the unrest in the Middle East. So the defendant asserts that he is immune from prosecution for his criminal scheme to overturn the 2020 presidential election because he claims it entailed official conduct. Not so. Boom. There you go. I'll just stop there. Okay, thanks for coming to the live, everybody. Oh, sorry if you're saying hello to me because I don't have the chat up because I'm a doofus. Yeah, no one was saying hello. Thanks to the replay crew. I know that politics isn't a popular topic. Well, it kind of is, but maybe not American politics from an Australian point of view. Although, if you want to say who else is really good too, Hal Sparks. He's a comedian, but so all of his stuff is hilarious. It's so good. And he is a real advocate for, he was saying what he was on, but he was on the Queer as Folk American show for like seasons and seasons. And he's straight from what I can see, or maybe he's bi, I don't know. He's married to a woman, but he was on like one of the like landmark gay TV series of all time, you know. But he's really good. So Hal, Hal Sparks. Although the defendant was the incumbent president during the charged conspiracies, his scheme was fundamentally a private one. Working with a team of private co-conspirators, the defendant acted as a candidate when he pursued multiple criminal means to disrupt through fraud and deceit. The government functions by which votes are collected and counted, a function in which the defendant, as president, had no official role. It's fairly straightforward. In Trump versus US, the Supreme Court held that presidents are immune from prosecution for certain official conduct, including the defendant's use of the Justice Department in furtherance of his scheme, as was alleged in the original indictment, and remained to this court to determine whether the remaining allegations against the defendant are immunized. The answer to that question is no. This motion provides a comprehensive account of the defendant's private criminal conduct, sets forth the legal framework created by Trump for resolving immunity claims, applies that framework to establish that none of the defendant's charged conduct is immunized because it either was unofficial or any presumptive immunity is rebutted, and requests the relief the government seeks, which is at the bottom that the court determined that the defendant must stand trial for his private crimes as would any other citizen. Boom! Like, absolutely. Like, even at the moment, like, I'm so sick of hearing outrageous lies from them. You know, even like big baby JD Vance crying about getting fact checked. Oh, you're not going to let me lie? No, we're not going to let you lie. And I don't see why the media conducts any fucking like interview with any Republican when they start spouting the lies. Shut it down. No, I'm not going to talk to you. That's a lie, and you know it. And, you know, like the amount of harm they're doing, the Haitians are suing them. And I think that when North Carolina and Arizona, oh no, it's not Arizona, it's the other side. When all those states that are affected by Hurricane Helene get back on their feet, they see that, like, they sue Donald Trump again for making lies up which have endangered people. Like, okay, next page. Come on, page. Alrighty. This motion provides the framework for conducting the necessary fact-bound immunity analysis required by the Supreme Court's remand order. So, and it's in 4 parts. When the Supreme Court did actually install this, they didn't define what would be official and non-official, okay? That made it a little bit scary, but I think it works in this situation because it could mean that Trump could use it to get rid of his enemies, which he has said in tweets. I'm going to arrest them, you know, for all that they did and so on. Oh, I'd like to see, I saw Tim Walz was on Fox, and he got really upset because they were covering Kamala something, her rally or whatever, and he's like, that's ridiculous. I shouldn't have to see that on Fox. Okay, so section 1, there's 4 sections. Section 1 provides a detailed statement of the case that the government intends to prove at trial. It includes conduct alleged in the superseding indictment, as well as other categories of evidence that they intend to present. So that's evidence, which should be addressed at the outset of proceedings. Section 2 sets forth the legal principles governing claims of presidential immunity. So deciding whether it's unofficial or official by analyzing the relevant content, form, and context to determine whether the defendant was acting in his official capacity or instead in his capacity as a candidate for re-election, where the defendant was acting as an office seeker, not office holder. No immunity attaches. Section 3 then applies those legal principles to the defendant's conduct and establishes that nothing the government intends to present to the jury is protected by presidential immunity. Although the defendant's discussions with the vice president about their official responsibilities qualify as official, the government rebuts the presumption of immunity. All right. And all the defendant's remaining conduct was unofficial, as content, form, and context show. The defendant was acting in his capacity as a candidate for re-election and not in his capacity as the president. In the alternative, if any of this conduct was deemed official, the government could rebut the presumption of immunity. Finally, Section 4 explains the relief sought by government and specifies the findings the court should make in a single order, namely that the defendant's conduct set forth in Section 1 is not immunized, and that as a result, the defendant must stand trial on the superseding indictment, and the government is not prohibited at trial from using evidence of the conduct described in Section 1. Here we go. Okay, so they're going to show you the evidence. They're going to argue whether it's unofficial or official, and then sum it up to say, this is what we want. Alrighty. I need a drink. There's lots highlighted here. I apologize, I'm sort of jumping around. So if this is probably a good one just to listen to. I'm not going to say anything that's not in here, and I'm probably just going to editorialize with what I think about things, and that's about it. All right. Hopefully, are you looking for a calm voice to read this out to you? So I've been thinking about recording some things like that, even though to me, my voice sounds like a chipmunk, very high-pitched. When I'm listening to it back, it sounds quite low and sexy in my head, but as I'm listening to it now, I'm sorry, I just did that, sorry. Yeah, that's not how it sounds when it's recorded. So, but I've been told it's relaxing, All right. The facts. When the defendant lost the 2020 presidential election, P.S. J.D. Vance will not say that he lost it, and he has said that he would have done anything that Donald Trump asked him to do. Are they planning to do it again if they lose? Yeah. So get out and vote. I'm not endorsing Kamala Harris. I think that she's getting more and more right-wing, and I don't think that she should be cozying up to the fucking Cheneys. I understand what she's doing, but she's pushing away that original base that was so hyped for her, Anyway, it's not my election, but whoever is in control of America actually affects the entire world, and that's why I care about it. He resorted to crimes to try to stay in office. With private co-conspirators, the defendant launched a series of increasingly desperate plans to overturn the legitimate election results in 7 states that he had lost: Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, New Mexico, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, the targeted states. His efforts, including lying to state officials in order to induce them to ignore true vote counts, manufacturing fraudulent electoral votes in the targeted states, attempting to enlist Vice President Michael R. Pence in his role as President of the Senate not vice president, to obstruct Congress's certification of the election by using the defendant's fraudulent electoral votes. And when all else had failed, on January 6, 2021, God, so long ago, you know, and it's only just getting done now. It's a little bit, it's a little bit crushing, you know, like, are they gonna get him eventually? I've learned more about like the type of shit he did, like the bribes he took and things like that. And it's just mind-boggling that people still follow him, you know? All right. And when all else had failed, on January 6, 2021, directing an angry crowd of supporters to the United States Capitol to obstruct the congressional certification. The through line of these efforts was deceit. The defendants and co-conspirators knowingly false claims of election fraud. They used these lies in furtherance of three conspiracies. One, just need to guess. Support, because I'm holding my, I just put it on this box. One, a conspiracy to interfere with the federal government function by which the nation collects and counts election results, which is set forth in the Constitution and the Electoral Count Act. This electoral college business that you guys have, it is so bizarre. And, you know, looking at the difference in the size of a state like California and like Pennsylvania, and you all have the same amount of like there's, I don't know if you have the same amount of electoral votes, and I know that gerrymandering, and there's a whole lot of things that, you know, that are unusual. Like, why not just have the popular vote? It's very bizarre. Oh no, I get it. It's sort of like handicapping, I suppose. But yeah, it probably needs an overhaul. Two, a conspiracy to obstruct the official proceeding in which Congress certifies the legitimate results. Why is there's a little chain emoji there? I don't remember putting that there. Hang on. A conspiracy to obstruct the official proceeding in which Congress certifies the legitimate results of the presidential election. And three, a conspiracy against the rights of millions of Americans to vote and have their votes counted. And that's a major thing, you know, like this is disenfranchising so many voters. This thing was going to, sorry. And what else was I going to say? It's very good. And if that was wrong, if Trump not winning was wrong, then what about everybody else who was elected? Like, what about all the Republicans that were elected that day? Was that wrong too? The only one that was wrong was yours? You know, like the logic doesn't logic with them. At its core, the defendant's scheme was a private criminal effort. Boom, 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 boom. In his capacity as a candidate, the defendant used deceit to target every stage of the electoral process, which through the Constitution, ECA, and state laws includes the state's notification to the federal government of the selection of their representative electors based on popular vote in the state. The meeting of those electors to cast their vote consistent with the popular vote and Congress's counting of the electors' vote at a certification proceeding. As set forth in details below, the defendant worked with private co-conspirators, including private attorneys, and so CC1, they're all co-conspirators, and private political operatives and one person. I think that might be Steve Bannon. The defendant also relied heavily on private agents such as his campaign employees and volunteers, like campaign manager, deputy commander, and campaign operative, P5. So they're all P as in people. In this section, the government sets forth detailed facts supporting the charges against the defendant. And did have January 6 hearings, and Trump even calls them J6, like they're cool or something. It's like, ugh. It's so pathetic. Before addressing in the next section why none of this conduct is subject to immunity under the Supreme Court's decision in Trump. The conduct set forth below includes the defendant's formation of the conspiracies leading up to and immediately following the 2020 presidential election. Certain information regarding his knowledge that there had not been outcome determinative fraud in the election, as he persistently claimed, and his increasingly desperate efforts to use knowingly false claims of election fraud to disrupt the electoral process. I think that's fairly clear. The government does not consider any of the following conduct to be subject to immunity for the reasons set forth in Section 3. You can see I've even got notes. She's got notes. All right. A, formation of conspiracies. And as my little side notes say, he's doing that again at the moment. And they're already saying, oh, we'll accept the election results if it's a free and fair election. So in other words, they're not going to accept it. But do you know what? I just don't think as many people are going to turn out for the insurrection. Like, I think it'll happen again. I think he'll get numbers to go and riot again. I mean, I think he'll get people to go, not the numbers. I think there will be a drop in numbers. There already is, people are tired. I was watching House Sparks yesterday, highly recommend, and he was on the border. It was on, because I've only just started watching House Sparks, I was like catching up on old ones. And it was when the DNC was happening, and here's this crusty old man with a white ring around his mouth because it's so hot, and he's in a suit that his makeup is running off his mouth because he's probably been licking it, and it's full of sweat, right? And he's on the border talking about how terrible it is. And like, if it's so terrible, how can you stand there without any, like, shouldn't you be being attacked, and shouldn't there be like illegals crossing the border right then and there? Anyway, he was talking about crimes that immigrants, undocumented immigrants had done. And the way he talks about sexual assault, I was disgusted. Like, it's not triggering for me. I've heard it talked about many times, but it struck me as a kid because of the way he was talking about it. And he's not a convicted, sorry, he was found criminally, he was found liable for rape against E. Jean Carroll, because it wasn't criminal, it was a civil case, so I can't remember the wording, but if it was a crime, he would have been convicted of it. And she's not the only one, E. Jean Carroll. There are many stories. So listening to this rapist talk about other rapists, he was enjoying it. He's disgusting. I was disgusted by that, TBH. Like, I've never really seen him talk extensively. I've heard of, he shits on immigrants all the time. But I hadn't really seen that, and to those people who have lost a family member or someone they love to an immigrant's violence is awful. But blaming all immigrants and standing behind Trump isn't going to bring your loved one back. It's not about rehabilitation. It's not about healing and, feeling your grief. It's about revenge. And that's the only thing that's maybe the only emotion that Trump really knows, because he's not a very emotional person. All right. Leading into the election, the defendant's private and campaign advisors, including P6 and P2, the defendant's a private citizen, and then the defendant's campaign manager, informed him that it would be a close contest and it was unlikely to be finalised by election day, in part because of the time needed to process large numbers of mail-in ballots prompted by the COVID-19 pandemic. So there were a record number of mail-in ballots due to COVID because they didn't want people to come out and, be amongst other people and spread the disease. The disease? I don't think it was a disease, Tish. What are you talking about? Spread COVID-19, coronavirus, So they pretty much knew that they were not going to have an outcome on election day. And I think that they are predicting that again because people, because of how election day goes, you might have to miss work. You may have to stand in a line for a very long time and you're not allowed to leave. There's all these strict rules to disenfranchise voters. Because this is a turn. I've heard other commentators say this. I'm stealing them. The majority report is my main one, but this is a turnout election. Just the more people who turn out for their party is the one that's going to win. Because most people have decided whether they're going to vote for Trump or against him, for someone else, not necessarily just Harris. So they told the defendant that the initial returns on election night might be misleading. That is, that he might take an early lead in a vote count that would diminish as mail-in ballots were counted because his own supporters favoured in-person voting, while supporters of his opponent, Joseph R. Biden, favoured mail-in ballots. And that's it. He would have taken an early lead, but privately, the defendant told advisors, including these people, that in such a scenario, this Einstein fucking genius move done, he would simply declare victory before all the ballots were counted and any winner was projected. I'm sorry, that's not how it's done. Gosh, dumb. Publicly, the defendant began to plant the seeds for that false declaration. In the months leading up to the election, he refused to say whether he would accept the election results, insisted that he could lose the election only because of fraud. Falsely claimed that mail-in ballots were inherently fraudulent and asserted that only votes counted by election day were valid. For instance, okay, we'll go through that, but a mail-in ballot is really important to the armed services who are protecting the country overseas. But of course, Donald Trump doesn't have any respect for the armed services. He famously called them suckers and losers. Mike Kelly, who was his chief of staff, was he a 4-star general? He was a like a highly ranked army dude. And he had lost his own son. When they went, Trump didn't want to go to memorials in France, things like that, because it was a bomber. And this is again Trump not understanding emotion. He said to Mike Kelly, that people who were dying, people at Arlington were like, what's in it for them? Like, he couldn't understand sacrificing for country. And he's supposed to be a patriot. Anyway, all right. So, for instance, in an interview on July 19, 2020, they're probably like already creating this list right now. When asked repeatedly if he would accept the results of the election, the defendant said he would have to see, and it depends. On July 30, despite having voted by mail himself earlier that year, the defendant suggested that widespread mail-in voting provided cause for delaying the election, tweeting, "With universal mail-in voting, not absentee voting, which is good, 2020 will be the most inaccurate and fraudulent election in history. It will be a great embarrassment to the USA. Delay the election until people can properly, securely, and safely vote." 3 question marks. God, it's dumb. In an interview on August 2nd, the defendant claimed that any basis that there is no way you can go through a mail-in vote without massive cheating. At a campaign event in Wisconsin on August 17th, the defendant told his supporters, "The only way we're going to lose this election is if the election is rigged. Remember that. It's the only way we're going to lose this election. So we have to be very careful." And I've heard him say that recently. In his acceptance speech at the Republican National Convention on August 24th, the defendant said that the only way they can take this election away from us is if this is a rigged election. On October 27, during remarks regarding his campaign, the defendant said it would be very, very proper and very nice if a winner was declared on November 3rd, instead of counting ballots for 2 weeks, which is totally inappropriate. I don't think that he's got a good measure on what's appropriate and inappropriate. This man took a thumbs up photo at Arlington Cemetery in a part that's not supposed to be photographed. And I don't believe that that's by our laws. Well, it is, dickhead. I don't believe that, so we'll see what happens. The defendant said that this despite, or perhaps because, his private advisors had informed him that it was unlikely that the winner of the election would be declared by November 3rd. But he was just going to declare it anyway. This is a lot of reading, and I can't eat rice crackers. Do you know how sad that makes me? By October 2020, a private, are we at the right? Yes. Private political advisor who had worked for the defendant's 2016 presidential campaign began to assist with the defendant's re-election effort. 3 days before Election Day, P1 described the defendant's plan to a private gathering of his supporters. And what Trump's going to do is just declare victory, right? He's going to declare victory. That doesn't mean he's the winner. He's just going to say he's the winner. After explaining that Biden supporters favored voting by mail, P1 stated further, and so they're going to have a natural disadvantage, and Trump's going to take advantage of it. That's our strategy. He's going to declare himself a winner. That's a bad plan. Like, that's like a high school running for class president sort of move, you know? Immediately following Election Day on November 3rd, the defendant did exactly that as his private and campaign. Can you imagine? Wow, we won! All the streamers, everybody's crying. We won. Bizarre. Oh no, where did I get up to? As his private and campaign advisers had predicted to him, in certain states, the defendant took an early lead on election day that began to erode. At approximately 11:20 p.m., Fox News projected that Biden would prevail in the state of Arizona. Oh, that one must have hurt. That one must have hurt him. And according to campaign advisor P4, he and the defendant were shocked and angry at this development. As election day turned to November 4, the contest was too close to project the winner. And in discussions about what defendants should say publicly regarding the election, senior advisors suggested that the defendant should show restraint while counting continued. Look who you're talking about. Show constraint. Restraint, sorry, not constraint, geez. Two private advisors, however, advocated a different course. Co-conspirator 1 and co-conspirator 6 suggested that the defendant just declare victory, which he had already done. And at about 2:20 a.m., yeah, that's a good time when it, 2:20 a.m., that's when everybody's expecting a concession speech or a winning speech from a president, of course. At about 2:20 a.m., the defendant gave televised remarks to a crowd of his campaign supporters, in which he falsely claimed, without evidence or specificity, that there had been fraud in the election and that he had won. This is a fraud on the American public. This is an embarrassment to our country. Ring, 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 ring. Hey, it's the pot calling the kettle black. Yeah. Yeah, no, Donald Trump just said that the 2020 election was an embarrassment to our country. Yeah. Yeah, that guy who loves Putin. Yeah. He said that the election was an embarrassment, not him. The one who dances terribly to all the songs that he's never allowed to use again. Yeah, that guy. Yep. All right, goodbye. We were getting ready to win this election. Frankly, we did win this election. In the immediate post-election period, while the defendant claimed fraud without proof, his private operatives sought to create chaos rather than seek clarity at polling places where states were continuing to tabulate votes. For example, on November 4, P5, a campaign employee, agent, and co-conspirator of the defendant, tried to sow confusion when the ongoing vote count at the TCF Center in Detroit, Michigan, looked unfavorable for the defendant. There, when a colleague at the TCF Center told P5, "We think a batch of votes heavily in Biden's favor is right." P5 responded, "Find a reason it isn't." Find a reason it isn't right. That's it, election interference right there. Give me options to file litigation, and even if it is, I don't know what that's supposed to say. When the colleagues suggested that there was about to be unrest reminiscent of the Brooks Brothers riot, a violent effort to stop the vote count in Florida after the 2000 presidential election, P5 responded, "Make them riot and do it. Make them riot. Make them riot." And the Brooks Brothers riot happens. It's named that because a bunch of dudes in Brooks Brothers suits went and tried to stop the vote counting. And I think it was successful because that was probably the first time I was really conscious of it. that, what's his name, Al Gore had won the popular vote. And no, I'd heard that they really did cheat then. But I remember thinking about it with W. When are you going to come out and support Kamala? W. Who cares? He's a war criminal. So, sorry, every American president is a war criminal, probably. Okay. The defendant's campaign operatives, supporters use similar tactics at other tabulation centers, including in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and the defendant sometimes used the resulting confrontations to falsely claim that his election observers were being denied proper access, thus serving as a predicate to the defendant's claim that fraud must have occurred in the observer's absence. What they did try to do is get more Trump supportive people on election boards to, try to have more influence over the process. I think mostly they have been taken care of legally to keep them accountable, but who knows? It can take one person to almost overthrow, make the states, not count or whatever. Yeah, that's really good words, Tish. I'm well spoken. Okay. Contrary to the defendant's public claims of victory immediately following election day, his advisors informed him that he would likely lose on November 4th, that is. He knew he was likely going to lose. He knew that. On November 7th, a private campaign meeting that included P2, P3, P4, and White House staffer P9, who came to serve as a conduit for information from the campaign to the defendant. Campaign staff told the defendant that he only had a slim chance of prevailing in the election, and that any potential success was contingent on the defendant winning all ongoing vote counts or litigation in Arizona, Georgia, and Wisconsin. Within a week of that assessment, on November 13, the defendant's campaign conceded its litigation in Arizona. Oh, why not? Why? Why? Curious, right? Meaning that based on his campaign advisor's previous assessment, the defendant had lost the election. Boom, there you go. That same day, in an implicit acknowledgement that he had no lawful way to prevail, the defendant sidelined the existing campaign staff responsible for mounting his legal election challenges from P2, P3, and others who were telling the defendant that the truth that he did not want to hear. Tell the defendant the truth that he did not want to hear, that he had lost. The defendant turned to co-conspirator 1, a private attorney who was willing to falsely claim victory and spread knowingly false claims of election fraud. As the defendant placed alternating phone calls to P3 and co-conspirator 1 throughout November 13, P1 informed co-conspirator 6 that private campaign advisor of the change writing, I don't know, that wording is weird. Close, hold, don't tell anyone Trump just fired P3 and put co-conspirator 1 in charge. Oh, okay. Informed them of the change of people, right? And You are to report to co-conspirator 1. When co-conspirator 6 asked if P2 was gone, P1 replied that they all report to co-conspirator 1 and that person 1 had made a recommendation directly that if co-conspirator 1 was not in charge, this thing is over. Trump is in to the end. I hope this is the end. I'm just so sick of hearing about him, you know? Makes my blood boil. I think my blood pressure's gotten more for being like for doing this, so I gotta get some of that Trump litigation money. All right. The next day, consistent with P1 description, the defendant announced his staff change by writing, I look forward to co-conspirator 1 spearheading the legal effort to defend our right to free and fair elections. Free and fair. Co-conspirator 1, person 10, person 11, co-conspirator 3, and person 12, a truly great team added to our wonderful lawyers and representatives. Why did you have such a big turnover of staff? Alrighty. B. The defendant knew his claims of outcome-determined fraud were false. And this I fully believe. I believe that he knew he lost. He knows he lost. Have a beverage. Following election day and throughout the charged conspiracies, the defendant, his co-conspirators, and their agents spread lies that there had been determinative fraud in the election and that he had actually won. God, imagine if it was successful back then. We would be in a bad state. Take it to... These lies included dozens of specific claims that there had been substantial fraud in certain states, such as the large number of dead, non-resident, non-citizen, or otherwise ineligible voters had cast ballots, or that voting machines had changed votes for the defendant to votes for Biden. And the defendant and co-conspirators continued to make these unsupportive, objectively unreasonable, and ever-changing claims, even after they had been publicly disproven or after advisors had directly informed the defendant that they were not true. He knew. The evidence demonstrates that the defendant knew his fraud claims were false because he continued to make these claims even after his close advisors acting in a capacity, but not in an official capacity, but in a private or campaign-related capacity, told him they were not true. These advisors included P9, the White House staffer, campaign conduit, and Pence, the defendant's running mate. Person 9, the relationship with the defendant began before P9 worked for him in the White House. P9 had known P13 for the defendant's son-in-law. Yeah. Since Where am I at to? I lost my spot, sorry. Okay, hang on, sorry, I've got to read that again. P9's relationship with the defendant began before P9 worked for him in the White House. P9 had known P13, the defendant's son-in-law. Oh, that's Jared Kushner. Since P13 was a child, and through P13 at P14, and then the defendant. P9 was one of several attorneys who represented the defendant in his first impeachment trial in the Senate in 2019 and 2020, including presenting arguments on the Senate floor in January 27, 2020, began working in the White House as an assistant to the president in the 27th, 2020. P9 began working at the White House as an assistant to the president in. I lost my train of thought again. Including P9 began working at the White House as an assistant to the president in August 20. In October 2020, P9 became interested in learning more about the defendant's campaign. And in early November 2020, after he began interfacing with campaign staff, P9 consulted with the White House counsel's office to ensure he complied with any applicable laws regarding campaign activity. Thereafter, and throughout the post-election period, P9 became a conduit of information from the campaign to the defendants. And over the course of the conspiracies, P9 told the defendant that unvarnished truth about his campaign legal team and the claims of fraud that they and the defendant were making. And sorry, I read that with the wrong cadence. All right, examples of these instances. P9 repeatedly gave the defendant his honest assessment that co-conspirator 1 could not mount successful legal challenges to the election. For instance, when the defendant told P9 that he was going to put co-conspirator 1 in charge of the campaign's legal efforts, but pay him only if he succeeded. He is such a scumbag. Did you hear him talking about overtime? Wage theft? He's such a scumbag. And I cannot believe working people choose him. But it's because he makes them feel special. And they know he's a liar, but he's their liar. He'll lie for them, you know? Oh, dear. P9 told the defendant he would never have to pay co-conspirator 1 anything. In response, the defendant laughed and said, "We'll see." Thereafter, in Oval Office meetings with the defender, co-conspirator 1, and others in which the co-conspirator 1 speculative claims, P9 told co-conspirator 1 in front of the defendant that co-conspirator 1 would be unable to prove his allegations in the courtroom. In a separate private conversation, when P9 reiterated to the defendant that co-conspirator 1 would be unable to prove his false fraud allegations in court, the defendant responded, "Details don't matter." Okay. In the post-election period, P9 also took the role of updating the defendant on a near daily basis on the campaign's unsuccessful efforts to support any fraud claims. P9 told the defendant that the campaign was looking into his fraud claims and had even hired external experts to do so, but could find no support for them. He told the defendants that if the campaign took these claims to court, they would get slaughtered because the claims are all bullshit. P9 was privy in real time to the findings of the two expert consultancy firms the campaign retained to investigate fraud. What's just a single C one? Need to be co-conspirator? Yeah, I don't know where. Okay. A second. P9 was privy to, in real time to findings of two expert consulting firms that the campaign retained to investigate fraud claims. Co-conspirator 1 and co-conspirator 2. Oh, consultancy firm or campaign firm, something like that. And discuss with the defendant their debunking on all major claims. For example, P9 told the defendant that George's audit disproved claims that C3 had altered votes. Ooh. In the post re-election, I'm sorry, it's a bit dry, isn't it? And it's making me tired. So thank you for sticking with me, replay crew, and my one person who's watching live. Mwah. In the post-election time period, Pence, the defendant's own running mate, who he had directed to assess fraud allegations, told the defendant that he had seen no evidence of outcome determinative fraud in the election. That feels satisfying to say, you know. This was in one of the many conversations the defendant and Pence had as running mates, in which they discussed their shared electoral interests. Pence gradually and gently tried to convince the defendant. I highlighted this line awkwardly, so it's making my eye jump around. This was one of the many conversations the defendant and Pence had as running mates in which they discussed their shared electoral interests. Pence gradually and gently tried to convince the defendant to accept the lawful results of the election, even if it meant they lost. The conversation included, it's so funny, he was like going, come on, you fought a good fight, it's time, Donnie. You can do it. You can do it. No, I mean, like, you can come back. A conversation on November 4th in which the defendant asked Pence to study up claims of voter fraud in states that they had won together in 2016 to determine whether they could bring legal challenges to candidates in those states. It wasn't just look at all of it, let me know what you think, but he told the campaign was going to go to court and make challenges, and then he just said, we're going to fight this and take a look at it, let me know what you think. A call between the defendant and Pence on November 7th, the day the media organizations began to project Biden as the winner of the election. Pence tried to encourage the defendant as a friend, reminding you took a dying political party and gave it a new lease on life. Do you think who else could have run the party? Mitt Romney? I think maybe what's her name? Oh my god, I just had it in my brain. The lady and Nikki Haley. I think Nikki Haley would be a decent opposition, leader. A call between the defendant and Pence on November 7th, the day the media organizations began to project Biden as the winner. Oh, I already said that. A November 11 meeting among the defendants, Pence campaign staff, and some White House staff, during which Pence asked when most of the lawsuits would be resolved. When does this have to come to a head? And the campaign staff responded, the week after Thanksgiving. A November 12th meeting with the defendant, Pence campaign staff, and some White House staff during. Ooh, I'm on the edge. During, where are we? Where did it go? During which Pence recalls the campaign lawyers gave a sober and somewhat pessimistic report on the state of election challenges. A private lunch on November 12, in which Pence reiterated a face-saving option for the defendant. Don't concede, but recognize process is over. He didn't want to do that either, did he? No. A private lunch. Oh, we already did that. A private lunch on November 16th, in which Pence tried to encourage the defendant to accept the results of the election and run again in 2024. Here we are. To which the defendant responded, I don't know, 2024 is far off. It's so far off. God, he couldn't be more wrong about long things. It is so far, but he's still there. A November 23 phone call in which the defendant told Pence that the defendant's private attorney, P76, was not optimistic about the election challenges. On December 21st, when Pence encouraged the defendant not to look at the election as a loss, just an intermission, this was found later in the day by a private discussion in the Oval Office, in which the defendant asked Pence, what do you think we should do? Pence said, after we have exhausted every legal process in the courts, Congress, if we still come up short, the defendant should take a bow. Boom. That's it. That's what you needed to do, Trump. Like, I don't like Mike Pence, but that's a man with honor. Discussions at which Pence apprised the defendant of conversations he had with governors in Arizona and Georgia in the context of election challenges, in which Pence had called the governors simply to gather information and share it with the president, and in which the governors did not report evidence of fraud in the elections in their states, and explained that they could not take actions to convince their states' legislatures. I talk good. Okay. But the defendant disregarded P9 and Pence in the same way that he disregarded dozens of court decisions that unanimously rejected his and his allies' legal claims, and that he disregarded officials in the targeted states, including those in his own party, who stated publicly that he had lost and that his specific fraud allegations were fake. The election officials, for instance, issued press releases and other public statements to combat the disinformation that the defendant and allies were spreading. At one point, long after the defendant had begun spreading false fraud claims, Naval's snoring real loud. P15, a White House staffer traveling with the defendant overheard him tell family members that it doesn't matter if you won or lost the election, you still have to fight like hell. What's that word, Tish? What is it? Various figures? Kind of looks like various fuglies, but that's not a note that I would write. So I don't know what I'm trying to say there, because that first letter is definitely an F. All right. The defendant and his co-conspirators also demonstrated their deliberate disregard for the truth, and thus their knowledge of falsity when they repeatedly changed the numbers in their baseless fraud allegations from day to day. I've heard Trump do this with the migrants, the illegal aliens. It's around about 15K, apparently, but he said 20, 25, 30, 32. It's like, okay, lie, right? But why is it so fantastical? It's always got to be obviously wrong. Ugh. At trial, the government will introduce several instances of this pattern in which the defendants and the conspirators' lies were proved by the fact that they made up figures from whole cloth. One example concerns the defendant and conspirators' claims about non-citizen voters in Arizona. The conspirators started with the allegation that 36,000 non-citizens voted in Arizona. Another thing that Trump has said that the reason why they're bringing in illegal immigrants and letting there be this open border. Hang on, the dog's getting active, so I'm just going to make sure they don't get too active. Stay there, please. Nothing's happening. Nothing's happening. I think something's happening. I don't know why. Nothing happened. He was saying something about, like they want to get these migrants or undocumented people voting, but they can't vote. They're not allowed to. It's hard for even a natural citizen to vote in the American elections at the moment. It's ridiculous. It's just not happening. Up down, please. All right. So the conspirators started with the allegations that 36,000 non-citizens voted in Arizona. 5 days later, it was beyond credulity that a few 100,000 didn't vote. 3 weeks later, the bare minimum was 40 or 50,000. The reality is about 250,000 days after that, the assertion was 32,000. And ultimately, the conspirators landed back where they started at 36,000, a false figure that they have never verified or corroborated. Ultimately, the defendants' steady stream of disinformation in the post-election pyramid schemes on the brain period culminated in the speech that he gave at a privately organized rally. Private, because it's not an official act. Rally at the Ellipse on the morning of January 6, 2021. In advance of the official proceedings in which Congress was to certify the election in favor of Biden, in his speech, the defendant repeated the same lies I can do that sometimes. No, hop down, please. Murphy. Hop down. about election fraud in Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin that had been publicly or directly debunked. The defendant used these lies to inflame and motivate the large and angry crowd of his supporters to march to the Capitol and disrupt the certification proceeding. Whew. I'm going to have a drink. All right. I'm going to go for a little bit longer. This was time consuming to read this. Okay, C. The defendant aimed deceit at the targeted states to alter their ascertainment and appointment of electors. Shortly after election day, the defendant began to target the electoral process at the state level by attempting to deceive state officials and to prevent or overturn legitimate assignment. And appointment of Biden's electors. As president, the defendant had no official responsibilities related to the state's admission of the election or the appointment of their electors, and instead contacted sales officials in his capacity as a candidate. As a candidate, right. Tellingly, the defendant contacted only state officials who were in his political party. He did it in national disasters as well. Who voted for Trump? We'll give them money. Other people? The defendant's attempts to use deceit to target the state's electoral process played out in Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, as well as those across these and other states that use certain voting machines. In addition to the following evidence of the defendant's conduct during the charged conspiracies, at trial, the government will elicit testimony from election officials from the targeted states to establish the object falsity and often impossibility of their defendants' fraud claims. Notably, although these election officials would have been more I just trailed off and I'm I'll read something and then I just have looked in a different spot and I cannot find it again. Yeah, it is interesting. I think I said because my dad lives with me and we both have said we've never known more about American politics ever. I've never, ever watched the DNC, the Democratic National Convention, ever. And I watched some of it. It's bizarre how much I know about it at the moment. And having been a history teacher, I do know a lot about history, but it's just drawn me in, and I think because I care so much about Palestine and that at the moment, that it's making me look at the process that makes that possible. Yeah. And also it's just how is this happening? How is there this criminal who's going to be maybe the president again soon, who was just the most corrupt, inept, ignorant dude? I mean, my country can't talk for much at the moment. I was telling my friends, Gus and Val, we recorded a podcast before I did this stream, so I've been talking for a long time. The politician who's going our current party would be probably a current party that's in control. The Labor Party would be comparable to the Democratic Party, sort of similar, except that the Labor Party used to be very union supportive. They're not that anymore. They're supporting the genocide. Like, there's a whole lot of different things that are wrong with them, and they are so bad at the moment. And they're looking after big business, and they've abandoned unions. They're, letting our two major supermarkets price gouge us and complicit in a genocide. So they're going to get voted out, and we are doomed with, I call him Potato Voldemort. He looks like Voldemort if he was a potato. Ah, it's terrible. It's terrible. And he's a ghoul. He's ignorant, he's xenophobic, he's homophobic, and because our Labor Party has forgotten its base, we are going to get that. Although we have a really healthy Green Party in Australia, our Green Party members are in our Senate and in our state house, so it's good. We have a really strong Greens Party, so I think that they are really going to grow more, because there's a lot of people like me who do not identify with either of the major parties, and they can see that the Greens are really pushing back on housing affordability, the genocide, unions, LGBTQIA plus, and like disability rights and things like that. So yeah. All right. My throat, I'm like croaky now. Where did I go? I went to this page. So it says, so he went to this rally at the Ellipse. That was the rally before they what other parties are there? The Labour Party isn't including the Greens Party is similar to the American Greens Party, so like they're basically the left wing party. The other party is called the Liberal Party, and they have a coalition with the National Party. The Liberals are just your basic conservative. Sorry, I was muted then. I just noticed. So there's the Greens. The Greens are just a left wing party. The Labor used to be more left wing. They're centre right, just like the Dems at the moment, and heading more right every day. The Liberals are basic conservative party, and National. There's another party called National, and the Liberals and the Nationals usually have a coalition to be in government as the leaders. And the National Party is they more represent farmers, but conservative as well. And then like there's a party called One Nation. I think you can guess what they're all about. One Nation. That's by a woman who's actually been in jail for election fraud and made besties with like one of our like famous serial killer couples. She's disgusting. And she's this awful red-headed harpy. She's the worst. Her name's Pauline Hanson, and she's been around since I've been in uni, so 20 years, and she's xenophobic. When she went on 60 Minutes in Australia, and she got asked if she was xenophobic, and it's one of her more famous sayings. She said, please explain. Please explain. She didn't know what xenophobia was. And she used to have a fish and chip store in a place called Ipswich, where I had a uni friend who was from there. And so we called her the fish and chip bitch from Ipswich, which is what she is. And she's awful. She's awful. And she's still around. So yeah. Okay, hang on. I'm gonna finish this paragraph. I think I'm on the wrong page now. All union workers used to vote Democrat no matter what. Yeah, I grew up in a union household to get your It's insanity, right? They hate the working class. Like it's so bizarre. But I mean, hate Joe Biden. He's a Zionist, racist dick. But he's done a lot. He's been the most pro-union, like, president in a long, long time. And he is for the worker. And I do like that he said, they said was he going to intervene in the docks strike? And he said, no, I'm not intervening in a strike. And I was like, okay, respect. I can respect that. And saying Kamala Harris said that too. So I think hopefully they'll win some unions back over from that, because they have been pretty pro-union, and just the fact that, I mean, Donald Trump admitted to like not paying overtime and hiring other people. Crazy, crazy, crazy. Well, hello, Kansas. Sorry if I flinch really quickly. It's because one of my dogs doesn't get along with the other one of the dogs, and I'm like, are they about to like get into a little biff? Okay, I'm gonna read one more paragraph, but thank you for the dialogue. In his speech, the defendant repeated the same lies. So this is the one just before they stormed the Capitol. Of election fraud in Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin that had been publicly or directly debunked. And he knew that. The defendant used these lies to inflame and motivate the large and angry crowd of his supporters to march to the Capitol and disrupt the certification of proceedings. I'm gonna bookmark that bit. Definitely. So it goes through Arizona. Like, we haven't got to the real juicy stuff, all right? Because what he said about Mike Pence is disgusting. And him just picturing, at one point in time, it was just Trump sitting in a room watching the big screen, watching the Capitol get stormed by his supporters, and just, he must have been just happy as a pig in shit. Look at them. Look at how he controls them. There's all, like all these big ass Trump flags everywhere, and they're doing it in his name. And you know what? He probably thought that they were gonna be successful. And it was just so hilarious. Not like funny as in haha funny, just like pathetic funny, that he said, oh, that was Nancy Pelosi's fault. What the fuck, God. And his lies are just so ridiculous. I've never actually watched too much of his speaking, and I it boggles the mind of how much lying he does and gets away with. And like I said a while back, I think any media source, obviously except for the ones that are pro him, if JD Vance goes on CNN, shut down his lies. Shut him down. Oh, you're going to keep lying? This interview's over. You're still lying. No, I'm not going to let you lie and hurt people, especially the lies with the hurricane, and that sort of thing, because they're getting information thinking that Trump has an inside knowledge because he's been briefed on it. No, he's making up lies, and then Fox News is repeating those lies. For some people, that's their only news source. So make sure, and I saw this on Pod Save America, they said the new people who are debunking these lies are us as people. We are the ones who are debunking the lies. We have to be that person in someone else's life to say, hey, no, that's not right. No, FEMA is fully funded. It's okay. And the $750 is just the initial thing. There's more money to be had. It's just so that the people have money to start with. And what's another one they were saying? That they've diverted funds for immigrants. Wrong. That's what Trump did. When he diverted funds from FEMA and made a detention center. What else are they saying? That FEMA is going to repossess your house? Ridiculous. And so people were not like, didn't want to get rescued because they thought that they were going to get their house repossessed. It's just wild. It's so harmful. The blame for Gen 6 from everyone on the right is bonkers. They're projecting an alternate history of what really happened. Yeah. Like, it'll be interesting. It's just so interesting to think about what they're going to say about this time, and having, like, I have consumed an unnatural amount of documentaries and books about Nazi Germany. And I just, like, voraciously, obsessively just watched and read and rewatched and that, because I just wanted to know, how did it happen? How did this happen? How did it happen? And it's happening again. So, there's going to be, because I used to joke, there's a TV station there's a couple of kind of like government or public funded TV stations, ABC and SBS. And SBS is kind of like it has Al Jazeera and like foreign language news and things like that. And I used to joke that, like, oh, it's Nazi Sunday on SBS, because they would always have some sort of like Nazi documentary, and I'd have a like, oh, I can't wait, it's Nazi, and then they would change it, Nazi Fridays. I would watch our Nazi documentaries. So yeah, it's just curious because it all, and it snuck up on us that because I've been to Germany twice. I really love going and checking it out, and yeah, to have it happen in our lifetime, we just didn't learn the lessons, did we? The amount of World War II vets, World War II soldiers who lost their lives, and seeing them now, like, be sympathetic to Hitler and things like that. Just, it's terrible, All right, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you very much for watching. And I know, like, it got a little bit dry. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep reading it. But I'll see how I might change it up a bit. But getting to what happened when they were actually storming the Capitol, when he was told that Mike Pence had been taken to a safe place because his life was at risk, and Trump said, so what? He was told or asked many times to call them off, and he refused. So yeah, it's interesting. we live in here now about a family of Gen 6s, mainly the mother of Ashley, but yeah, that's it. You know, people talk about the Trump assassination attempt very often without mentioning the firefighter who passed away. You know, it's a miracle he was saved. Yeah, but somebody else died. So do you want to stop celebrating? Mm? Mm. Okay. Thanks everybody. If you can like and subscribe, if you wanna tell people about this silly Australian with too many dogs that cares too much about American politics at the moment. That's me. All right. I will see everybody next time. All right. Goodbye now. Oh, look at Minnie. Minnie's coming over. Minnie had me say goodbye. Because I think she's I'm pretty sure she's pregnant. She's got a big belly. And she's been like asking to get carried to bed the last 2 nights. Like, I don't do that for her. So she's been a bit of a diva at the moment. She deserves it. All right.